So I wanted to learn Vim motions, and I decided what better way to do that than to do a project in Neovim. And I decided I'll create an Express boilerplate because the complexity will be relatively simpler, because dealing with Vim motions took most of my focus anyway. So I'm not a complete beginner to Vim. I have used it before and I've practiced a little bit, but this will be the first time I'm doing a complete project in it. I also haven't used type module before in package.json. This allows me to use the newer ES6 import and export syntax instead of using the common JS const syntax. And I forgot to go into insert mode before starting typing. And spoiler alert, that happens a lot. So I'm going to put a counter up there every time that happens. So what I like to do is that instead of starting the Express server in the index.js file, I create an app.js file from where I export a function in which I build the entire application, and that function returns the app. I do that because I am aware that in newer versions of Node, you can have a top level await, but it's just a thing of habit, because previously we couldn't do that. And that just makes it future proof that in case you want to use await, you can do that. So here I definitely should have had my Vim terminal in full screen mode instead of taking up half the screen, and you'll see why in just a second. At first I didn't notice that the start was gone, and then I was wondering where the start went. And now you know. So basically I pressed certain keybind that it appended the line below to the line above. So this is me trying to select the entire word and then put double quotes around it with a shortcut instead of moving around and doing it. Wow, that did not work. I was trying to do a if test and I accidentally ended up deleting the entire line. I was kind of struggling trying to wrap my head around doing this entire project in Vim while dealing with all of the key bindings. Like you can actually see me struggling while doing that. It was just kind of hard not being able to visualize the entire project structure, which I have gotten so used to in on the left side in Visual Studio Code. And see, now when I made Neovim full screen, I realized what the issue was. I kind of got stuck thinking what the issue was and why NodeMon won't run index.js. So I did end up taking Visual Studio Code's help in figuring out what the issue was. And this made me realize how much I rely on Visual Studio Code for syntax related stuff. So I'd been doing a lot of Golang for advent of code. And in Golang, you need to have a trailing comma if you're putting stuff on new line. So I did that out of habit. Well, I finally got NodeMon to start running index.js. Time to get working on the boilerplate now. And then this happened. I got stuck inside of that autocomplete dialog box and I didn't know what was happening. And it took me a little while to realize that I had to do the :q command to get out of it. I wasn't aware that that even happens. Constantly going back to common JS syntax is definitely not helping me. One thing I did notice is that the LSP server that I installed in Neovim for JavaScript, well, it was actually for TypeScript, gave me much better code completion and LSP features than I had ever gotten in VS Code for JavaScript. Here I just added some boilerplate stuff to cleanly stop the server in case of an error. I created the entire folder structure in another terminal instead of doing that in Neovim because I was really struggling with creating files and folders. I actually got to the point where I got exhausted by just working with key bindings because it was so hard to focus on anything else, and I just took a break. I created a config file from where all of the environment or config related variables will be exported from. I changed the hard coded values to come from config file. What I'm working on right now is a global try catch function which will be used to wrap all of the controllers. I got this idea from another open source boilerplate and I love it because then you don't have to litter your entire code with try catch blocks. It really makes the code look a lot more concise and neat. So I was building all of this live on Twitch and it was my first time streaming and one viewer joined the stream. Hi there, viewer. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to my stream. I'm trying to learn Vim by writing a JavaScript, by writing an Express boilerplate. So far, it's going horribly wrong. After having the basic server setup down, I finally started working on the routing. Wait, where did root_routes.js go? Did I just close the file without saving it first? I guess I'll just have to create that again. When I tried to create a file with the same name in the same directory, it actually kept it in the memory. Thank you, Neovim. Here again, I couldn't debug in Neovim what was happening and what was giving the error. So I had to use VS Code again to figure out where the problem was. And it was with just the number of closing brackets in their sequence. One thing I did miss in Neovim is the ability to auto close brackets like it happens in VS Code. I'm sure that there is a plugin out there that does that, but I didn't had it installed. I also missed the auto file saving feature from VS Code. Actually, I also found out for the first time that if you are using type module in package JSON, there is no variable called __dir name. This final error, Vim just kept showing it, but the server was running fine and it didn't really cause any issues. I don't know why that was happening. Maybe the parsing was just stuck. I didn't bother restarting Neovim. I finally got a successful response from the endpoint and I was just done for that day. It was really exhausting creating that little piece of boilerplate in Neovim. I did definitely learn a lot. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue using Neovim as my main editor, but I do want to practice it quite a bit more. It definitely has a lot of advantages. For example, I recently had an issue in an old project that I'd worked on at work, and I didn't had that set up on my local machine. It would have taken a relatively longer time to set it up, but I was just able to log into this dev server and fix it right there on the server by using Vim as my editor because I had been practicing in it a little bit and I got comfortable with it. That definitely saved me a lot of time and helped out a lot. If you guys made it to the end of the video, drop a like, leave a comment, share the video, and join me on my Twitch.